Alrighty guys, straight into it, live obviously from the warehouse to the point where there's actually a couple of technical difficulties. We're a couple of minutes over. So for those who have just joined us or who have joined us, a very big g'day from myself, from not only myself but the whole team obviously at Hentley Farm. It's an absolute pleasure to be here to launch into episode 5 this week of Knockoffs with Nick. I'm of course your host Nick and Brand Ambassador here at the farm. Getting into our last, I can't believe it, it's actually our very last episode, if you like, of the Taste Along series for those who are tasting along at home. I've got a couple of absolutely ripping wines to get through, of course, today. But of course, like we've done last time, we want to make sure that everyone can hear us okay, because we are, as I said, right in the warehouse. You can hear a bit of background noise with obviously in the beautiful barrel room. Can everyone hear? Can everyone see as usual? I always just like to check in and make sure. I'm getting a couple of thumbs up, which is fantastic. I'm going to go ahead.
Good stuff. That's a good start. Well, it didn't start that well.
Well, maybe it's the barrels. I don't like the signal.
I feel it's right to me.
No, I disagree. I disagree fully. So what we're doing is, as usual, we want this to be a dialogue rather than a monologue, of course. So just think about this as a very long geographical table across all things Facebook, Instagram, and later YouTube as well. Tell us where you're from. Tell us some questions because we want to get through to all of them the best that we possibly can. But the greatest part about today is that we have our first return guest. It is none other than our chief winemaker, Andrew Quin. Andrew, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This second time.
Can I just start by saying I'm disappointed in your colour?
Well, it's the
Bit
last
brighter
time
would have been better. I mean, I've gone with a
You've gone bright today.
vest.
Which way?
So, good dance maybe for next time.
Which works out. Now, from last time, from our last conversation,
Yes.
You had just wrapped, and it was about 6 weeks or thereabouts ago.
Yep.
You just wrapped up all things vintage at that particular point.
Sure.
What does Andrew Quin do when he's not vintaging? When he's not
Yeah, I mean, the thing with vintage is I think sometimes people think that vintage stops, the fruit stops coming in, the work's
Right,
done.
yeah.
But, the reality is there's still a hell of a lot of stuff to do in the winery thereafter.
Of course.
We're here amongst the barrels,
Yeah.
and all of our reds go through malolactic fermentation,
Yeah.
so secondary fermentation and conversion of acids
Yep.
in barrel.
Yep.
Once those wines are finished, we've got to rack them out, clean them up, and put them back to barrel. So we spend time doing that. But also whites. We're getting whites ready for bottle. We bottled our Riesling a couple of weeks ago. And some contract work we're doing for whites as well. So
Yep.
yeah, there's lots happening in the winery and the vineyard as well. You know, we're getting ready for pruning and burning vines that we've cut out and doing stuff like that.
It's chilly out there at the moment. It was like frosts the other day. It was pretty intense. So.
Yeah, look, I woke up the other morning in Angiston and my phone said it was minus 2.7, which is
almost minus
pretty
3.
damn cold.
It's so it's freezing. So okay, before we get kicked off into this week's episode, which is the tale of two wines, and
Yes.
of course we are talking about two wines from the very, very iconic luxury collection. We are of course talking about the Beauty and the Beast. But just before we went on, we were chatting, and you said, you know what, Nick, I want to mix things up because I'm a guest again on the second time of the episode, right? Second viewing, if you like. And you were gonna give me two truths and one lie.
I'm not sure that's quite how it went then.
I want to guess about this because.
Okay, all right.
Over to you. I want to hear.
Do you want me to give you all three at once?
All three at once, and I want to guess which ones are.
Okay, so the first one is that I was the lead singer in my primary school grade 6 musical.
Okay. That's a good one. Okay, fair. This is juicy.
Yeah. The second one
Yep.
is that my grandfather
Yep.
was the captain of the Victorian cricket team.
Really? Could
Well,
be.
well,
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And finally,
yes.
that I have no formal winemaking qualifications.
That's the one. Straight up, it's got to be.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Making wine is good.
Shit, I really hope it wouldn't be that easy.
But singer, and so your grandfather was what was he?
He was the captain of the Victorian cricket team.
You're
back in
kidding.
the day. Played against Don Bradman, caught him out after he made 300 runs.
That's amazing. Fun little fact for you, Donald Bradman and I share the same birthday, a couple of years apart, granted.
And what about cricket skill? Are you in similar sort of vein?
Let's move on. So as we continue on, my sporting world is limited, let's just say. But let's get kicked off. Obviously, for those who are tasting along at home, thank you very much for that as well, by the way. That was awesome.
I don't know how you talk me into that. That's great.
We are going into this week's episode, which is Beauty and the Beast. As I said, two absolute icons from the luxury collection. But before I get kicked off, there is a question. Holly.
So we've got Mike Gamble and
Yes.
Glenn joining us. Say hi.
G'day,
again.
guys.
Hi, guys.
Happy
How you doing?
Friday.
Welcome.
And we've got David Minchin who says, back by popular demand, of course. We need you.
Yes.
He's
Thank
happy
you.
to have you here. So.
Nice to see you guys.
Love it, love it, love it. So let's get kicked off. We have two wines that are, absolutely awesome. They're some of our famed part of the portfolio. I guess what makes these two wines so unique from the winemaker's perspective, specifically?
I mean, I guess when you use the term unique, the first thing that comes to mind is the soil and
Yeah.
the microclimate that they're grown in.
Mhm.
But I think also it's pretty unique to produce two wines that are grown so close together in one vineyard and try and tell that terroir story. Certainly unique in Barossa anyway. I think more commonly single vineyard wines are produced in the Barossa and they're about telling stories of the different sub-regions
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
impart their characters on Shiraz and the Barossa. Where here we're saying, well, here's two blocks, not 100%, but predominantly there's two blocks that are grown only sort of 300 or 400 metres apart
Yeah.
and impart different characteristics. And so I think that's the uniqueness in the story.
Yeah.
For mine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they are absolutely stunning wines, and it shows that almost sub-regionality, right? That's what a lot of people like to talk about
Sure,
in that
sure.
sort of type of perspective. Can you tell us a little bit about that sub-regionality? Just a little
Yeah,
bit?
I mean, for those, a lot of people watching, I'm sure, have come down to the Salador and seen the place. And I think you get a really good feel when you drive in from the Sturt Highway and look down the gully that's created by Granite Creek, and you get these beautiful banks on the east and western sides.
Yeah.
And that's what creates the difference.
Yeah.
It's those banks, the sunlight interception. What we get is generally that the cooler air sort of settles down into the gully in the evenings of the growing season, and so the temperature variance is probably not as significant as Keith likes to carry on about, but there is a difference, like 2-3 degrees difference from up on the hillside versus down in the creek. And so, it's all those little things. Soil depth is another one. Little changes in soil characteristics. So, they're the things that really drive the characteristics. But the thing for me is when I came to Hentley Farm back in 2008, I looked at the Beauty and the Beast, the wines, the story, and I always wanted to make sure that when you do this, when you sit there and taste the two wines side by side, that we really tell the story in the glass. And so rather than just making the wines exactly the same way, the idea from the start has been about using winemaking techniques to really highlight the natural characteristics of those blocks. So the Beauty block produces more blue fruits, more aromatic lift, and really soft tannins. So we're using techniques that sort of highlight those characters. Opposite story with the Beast. More tannin, more colour, more density. And so we use winemaking techniques that highlight that vineyard and its natural characters. And therefore, hopefully, when we sit down and taste these two wines, there's a real point of difference, not just in the story, but we're really telling that story in the glass.
Yeah, because the thing is, for people obviously who tune in or may or may not know, but it's the same cutting, it's the same clone, it's the same varietal, and they were planted at exactly the same time, but just within that sort of distance apart, which is awesome. So let's get kicked off with the Beauty to start.
Sure.
And obviously, cheers, thanks for joining us for Friday Knuckles. Hope you got a good weekend.
We can definitely do the cheers.
Oh yeah, no, we can.
Last time I did it, we got in trouble.
We did. So we're looking at the 17 release, obviously, of the Beauty, which is the current release as part of the luxury collection. What makes the Beauty different in its own right, I suppose? I mean, obviously, we've got the Viognier edition, which is a pretty big sort of aspect. But in the 17 release particularly, what makes this quite interesting?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we just talked about the vineyard and the impact of the soil and the cooler air and what it does to the block. The Viognier is a part of that, and the Viognier edition sort of precedes me. I do it a bit differently than they used to before I came along. But the Viognier is very much, like I said, there to highlight the characteristics. So it helps bring some more aromatic lift, and it helps us soften out the palate. But in terms of what we do in the winery, we go for really light extraction. So we don't do a lot of pump overs. We don't do so we're not really trying very hard during the fermentation to extract lots of tannin. We do in the first couple of days, but then after that we probably only pump it over once a day and not push too hard for tannin extraction. But the other, I sometimes forget half the things that we do. Some of the things we do that are different to what we'll talk about with the Beast. We press it earlier, so we generally basket press it when there's still some sugar in the fermentation, so getting it off skins before it goes dry.
Yeah.
And that's because alcohol kind of acts as a bit of a solvent. So as you get more alcohol in the ferment, you tend to extract more of those sort of dry tannins. And so the idea of getting it off skins while there's still some sugar is about retaining that freshness and that softness of tannin. So pressing it earlier, we do a little bit of our barrel ferment, so we take juice off, ferment it in barrels. Again, get it off skins, ferment it away from the skins, produce softness and elegance. And yeah, less new oak than we do in the beast. So it's only about 30% new French oak compared to what is a higher percentage of the beast. So I'm sure I've forgotten a couple of things.
Well, actually, oak is one that comes up quite regularly. Obviously, the oak comparison between, say, the Beauty and the Beast, and that sort of breakdown. Are you able to comment a little bit on the 2017 vintage? What was done?
Yeah, so the oak's been very similar in terms of treatment for the last 4 or 5 years. I know Keith talked about his double oaking of the Beast last week, I think.
Oh, yes, we're going to get to that. I'm very excited to talk about that.
And so, yeah, there has been a transition in terms of oak treatment over my sort of 10, 12-year journey here at Hentley Farm, where there was a lot more new French oak used in the early days, and we're now using less. But the Beauty oak has been at about sort of 30, 35% new French oak for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And that's where it needs to be for mine. What we want with the Beauty, what we look for in the oak, both the percentage of new oak in the barrels that we're using, is we want tannin support, but we don't want the oak aromatic and flavour to overtake the fruit. Because it's all about the freshness and the balance and the elegance of this wine. And so I've always found that somewhere between that sort of 30-35% with the barrels that we use is about right to provide that support without dominating. Where the Beast, it's the Beast. It's a bigger style. We pick the Beast a bit riper. We chase much more tannin. We chase much more colour. And so it's a wine that firstly can stand up to that oak. You know, it's got the fruit weight and the intensity to stand up to that influence of new oak. But also it's a wine style thing, right? It's a wine style that can hold the barrels, but we also want you to see a little bit of wood in the wine. We always want the fruit to stand forward. But we're happy for you to see a little bit of oak influence. And so the Beast sits at about sort of 60-65%.
Okay, all right. And I believe there's a comment over here.
Beautiful. So we've got Janet and Robert tuning in from Norwood. They say hello.
Hi guys.
Denise, she wishes that she was here in person, tasting along with you, and obviously looking at this stunning space that we're in. Super unique as well.
Andrew's choice. He won't admit it, but it was. So
that's not true and false. It was all my own.
And we've also got Tim Colgan, who's looking forward to getting his magnums as well. So yes. And just one last comment from Marie. Right, she says the 2008 Beauty is absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
It's a long time ago, 2008. It was,
when would you drink that? When obviously outside of a beautiful evening like tonight, but when would be the max window capacity? When would you be sort of wanting to?
We obviously talk about this a lot. And for me, the beauty, obviously, with the wine style, what we're trying to achieve in terms of winemaking, is certainly not a wine that we probably look at as having the ageability of the Beast. But I reckon a really lovely window for the Beauty is 10 to 15 years. Some vintages probably have 20 years in them, but I'm not sure you need to wait that long. You can drink it young too.
Of course.
And so, I think the 08 is probably sitting in a really smart window at the moment. One of the things that has changed with the journey of the Beauty is that we're looking to pick probably slightly earlier than they were, particularly with the Beauty back in 08. And so the 08 is a big wine. It's a big, dense wine.
Huge,
lots of power and lots of weight. And so, look, it's probably one of those vintages that could go 20, but I think it's in a nice window. So I'd drink it.
Well, I hope you're enjoying it, of course. But which brings us on to the next question that we've obviously got, and the next thought process is 2017. I guess as a vintage was pretty bold, pretty intense. You commented a little bit about it in the first episode, but we were looking at different varietals. This is 2017 Beauty and Beast versus other vintages. What are your thoughts? I mean, how do they compare?
So I believe it or not, can't quite remember what I said about it in the first episode. So hopefully this is similar. But my recollection of 17 was that we had a lot of winter rainfall. So we had really good winter rainfall, which meant we had still balanced, but reasonably good crops. And as a result, we ended up hanging fruit out, really trying to chase flavour intensity and phenolic ripeness, so for tannins to become ripe. that took time, and we ended up picking, in some cases, a month later than we normally would.
Yep.
And that impact, particularly on Shiraz, was that the wines are really, really intense. Like you said, they've got lots of power, lots of richness.
Yep.
The challenge for us blending was trying to find the sort of finesse and the elegance and in the wines across the board, because they were all really big, really dense, really structured, really intense wines. So I often think about vintages as some vintages are really great beast years and some vintages are really great beauty years.
Yep.
And I probably, for me, that description is probably obvious. It's a great beast year,
Sure.
and getting the beauty to show the finesse and elegance has certainly been the challenge for us, but
Yeah.
hopefully we achieved it.
Absolutely. Well, certainly with the huge points that we've got this year as well, for those who are into their points, certainly up there 97, I believe, for the beauty this year, which is huge. So, which is a good segue, I guess, onto the beast. Now, for those who are at home, obviously we're here with Andrew Quin, our chief winemaker at the farm. Now, in the in the packs that obviously that a lot of you have got, and obviously tantalising you probably for the last month or so. This is the last episode of that tasting pack, and you can see obviously our baby bottle of beast down through here as well, which you would have received. And for some out there, getting very excited and grabbing some larger formats. Damien, you know who you are if you're tuning in with your family. A big hello to you up in Brisbane. But we are going to get on to the beast, of course. But before we do, Holly, I believe there's a question, comment,
Yes.
query,
So
like,
we've got
dislike.
love, actually.
Yes.
Ned Drayden, he
Oh!
says, best send a carton of the 27 Beauty up, Nick. So you better get onto that post knockoffs.
Ned, consider it done.
And Kim Elliott has cracked a 2014 as well of the Beauty. So he's
Beauty,
drinking that tonight with us.
Definitely a beauty vintage. I think 14 was a cracker. Really,
Yeah.
really vibrant, pretty vintage. So I love that one.
And then, quick question, from
cool.
Christopher Mullen. He just wants to know what block, do the Beauty and Beast come from?
Sure, yeah. So they predominantly come from 2 blocks off the property. The beauty block is the one that, if you've come to the restaurant in Salvador, is set out in the atrium of the restaurant. The beauty block is directly opposite, so sort of sits down in that lower part of the vineyard, as we said, so the cooler air sort of settles down there and slows the flavour development. Where the beast is, if you come down the dirt road and turn left to come down the hill towards the Salvador and the restaurant, the beast block is right there on your right, on the northern side of the dirt track as you come down the hill. So yeah, they're quite close together, but the beast is, I guess we can go on and talk about the beast as our next step anyway.
Yeah, well, that actually works out really well.
That beast block is up on that western hillside, and we get very little topsoil up there. So Keith dug, I don't know if you talked about this last week, I missed the episode, believe it or not, but he dug about 40 soil pits when he set the place up. And what we know from those soil pits is that this block up here on the hill only has about 25 centimetres of red clay loam before it runs into this sort of shattered limestone. It's a bit like the terroir soils of Coonawarra. And so very little topsoil, really exposed to the early morning sun and the warmer temperatures throughout the day. And so as a result, the beast block just always produces such great tannin structure and really dark, intense fruit. And in terms of winemaking, lots of pump overs, quite often a lot of hand plunging. And so where I said the beauty we might only pump over once a day later on in fermentation, we'll be pumping this over 3 times a day. The whole way through, we make sure that it goes dry before we press it off. Press as hard as we can in the basket, get as much tannin structure as we can, and of course more new oak as well. So that's, and just to go back over, that's what it's about. It's using these little techniques to make sure that we're highlighting the natural characteristics of those 2 blocks, thereby hopefully telling the story in the glass.
I think it does incredibly well, obviously, with there. And I guess talking of oak for a second, this is a really great segue onto what we did discuss with Keith, and he unapologetically confirmed that it was you who called him a lunatic for double French oaking to begin with. How has the beast changed, I guess, since those sort of days stylistically with you at the helm?
Yeah, I mean, it probably refers to the winemaking as a whole in some ways.
Yeah.
But certainly one thing that we're looking to do these days is pick as early as we can.
Yeah.
We still want to make wines that are classic Barossa. We don't want to make wines that don't tell the story of Barossa. Absolutely, Red Barossa. It is a warm climate.
Yeah.
Sugars do accumulate fairly quickly.
Yeah.
We're never going to produce amazing 30% alcohol wines here.
Yeah.
So I'm not suggesting we're picking them ridiculously early, but we're trying to pick at a level where you achieve the style, you achieve the quality, you achieve the intensity without the alcohol having to blow your absolute head off.
Yeah.
And so I think back in the early days when Keith set this place up was obviously a period when Robert Parker in America was probably driving a lot of the styles being produced here. You know, if you made something that was 18% alcohol, there was every chance he was going to give it 100 points and you'd sell out over there overnight. And so that was the style of the day, and it worked really well for the region at the time. But what I'm looking to do is produce wines that have more sort of finesse and more balance, and that's even the case for the wine like the Beast. You know, it's a 15% Barossa Shiraz, but we wanted to have balance. We wanted to have that soft side, and we wanted to even the Beast still have some freshness and some elegance. So the journey has been about picking slightly earlier and using less new oak. Keith's 200% was a little bit insane, let's be honest.
I love it.
For those who don't really understand that means that he put the wine into a new barrel, and about 6 months later he pumped it from that new barrel into another brand new barrel.
Expensive. That was the lunatic.
Very expensive, but also a lot of oak being imparted on that wine. To be fair to Keith though, at the time it was a 5-year-old vineyard that he put in a bottle, called it the Beast. I think was charging $60 a bottle at the time, and sent it over to Robert Parker and got, I think, 96 points for a Barossa Shiraz off a 5-year-old vineyard. Which, jokes aside in terms of the oak use, it does tell an amazing story. How can a Barossa Shiraz vineyard that's only 5 years old produce that sort of quality? So, well, it's still crazy.
Keith, if you're watching, hello. I hope you're well. So we're drinking the 2017, but I think what a lot of people are asking at the moment is how is 2020 for the Beast shaping up, and the beauty, of course.
Interesting vintage. I mean, it was low crops this year. We didn't get a lot of rainfall through winter and spring, so we saw low crops. And what was really interesting was it looked like it was going to be a super hot vintage, but then once we got through January, it actually cooled down. And so we saw an extended flavour development period sort of through February and March, and actually ended up with reasonably late harvest dates as a result. And so, I mean, the concern with low crop years is sometimes they produce sort of overripe flavours and they can look a bit stewed and a bit dead fruited. But what we found is because of those late cool conditions, we're actually seeing lots of freshness and lots of lift, and the wines are looking super balanced. So we don't have enough of them, but the quality looks seriously good.
Amazing. So this is going to be a little bit of fun. We're going to mix it up. So prepare yourself.
I don't know if I am prepared. You've got a question. Come on.
Before we do, you're right. Question.
Lots of questions coming
through.
Good. So we've got Larry, Nick, Ken, Helen, Lynn. They are comparing the 14 Booty with the 17 Beast. Say that it's very close in competition, but they believe the 17 Beast is the winner.
Okay.
So quite popular. We've got Tim again. He says he's got the Beauty and the Beast Magnums from 2006 onwards, but he's just missing the 2012. So
we'll have to organise that.
Yeah.
You better sort that out. That's possibly the best vintage of the whole lot. You better sort that out for me.
We've also got Damien. He says, "Hey Nick, thanks for the Magnums. Currently going down well with the fresh focaccia from your favourites in Brisbane."
Awesome. G'day guys.
Sounds good.
And a couple of people tuning in. They're looking forward to our next tasting. So when we can actually travel again, heading over to Melbourne and interstate, I guess, to bring this experience to people, which will be super exciting.
Definitely.
And we've got a question from Samuel for you, Quinny. Any whole bunch on the 2020 Beast?
Yeah, good question. Whole bunch is something that, if you go back to when I started here 10 years ago, I didn't use any whole bunch at all in the winery. But we have started using a lot more whole bunch in the last sort of, I guess, 4 or 5 years. But predominantly we use bunch in Grenache. We do some Shiraz as well. We do a little wine called the Rapscallion that some of you may have seen, that we use a fairly high percentage of whole bunch, but it's really only in those wines. I guess if I thought about something we might do in the future with bunch of these two wines, it would be more likely something I would do in the Beauty, because whole bunch really brings lovely aromatic lift and a sort of real brightness in the aromatics, so it could fit the Beauty style maybe moving forward. But the Beast is all about that classic approach to winemaking and that tannin drive. So no, the really short answer, no bunch in there at all. Good try though.
Cool. All right, so
I'm
pumped for this bit.
Okay,
So this is our quick fire round. Right, this is all about, please, go. as much as you like.
Okay,
This is your creation. I sort of did. This is a quick fire round. 10 questions from varying members around, possibly staff members. Possibly.
Okay.
We're going to get in.
I'm more nervous now than I was.
No, this is perfect. You ready?
Okay, all right.
So, there's no clock, but I always like saying it. Start the
Start
clock.
the clock.
Being relatively inland where we are here in the Barossa, if you had a boat, what would you name it?
Well, that's a fantastic question. I actually do have a boat.
You do?
It doesn't have a name. But given your reference to inland, I feel like the Ark.
A bit biblical. Very creative. Okay, I see what's Okay. Outside of winemaking, what is the most creative thing that you've done?
Oh, that's a tough question. I studied a bit of landscape design before I came into winemaking.
Okay.
And I worked out I was really bad at it, so I became a winemaker. So that's probably the next thing.
That's awesome. Word on the street is that you're a keen golfer. Do you have a handicap? And if so, what is it?
Look, I am a keen golfer. Keen doesn't necessarily mean that you're any good.
Yes, okay.
I don't have a handicap.
Okay.
If I did have a handicap,
Yep.
it would definitely be north of 18.
Okay, all right.
Which means nothing to you.
No,
sure.
not necessarily, but I'm assuming that's good.
It's not good.
Okay,
No.
fair enough.
Very bad.
If you weren't a winemaker in this moment,
Right.
what would you do?
Look, I have a thing for ride-on mowers.
Okay.
So continuing the theme from the previous question,
Right.
I think I'd probably be a golf course greenkeeper, so I could just ride around on my mower all day. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure that was a golf swing.
It was.
Moving on, that shows my sportsmanship once again. Are there any varietals that you would never order off a menu?
Where have you come up with these questions? Well, a columbine, grown heavily in the riverland.
Okay.
It's not a variety that I ever get terribly excited by, so I probably wouldn't order columbine if it was on.
Fair enough. Very good. On to different varietals. What is the strangest or most unique varietal that you've ever experimented with?
Oh, there's a few actually. I do a little bit of contract winemaking. And there's a couple I've worked with lately. A variety by the name of Greco. It's a white variety.
Okay.
Which is loaded with acid.
Okay.
That's pretty interesting.
From where?
I think it's Italian.
Yeah, right.
Italian variety.
Okay.
And the other one this year I worked with Ceseo, I think it's pronounced. It's a red-fleshed Portuguese variety. It's pretty cool as well. Also loaded with acid.
Okay, very cool indeed. If you could never use French or American oak in your wines from this day forth, what type of oak would you use and why?
Well, that's really easy.
Okay.
I'll use Hungarian because
Yeah.
it's a bit like French.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Fair. Absolute favourite wine region outside of the Barossa Valley?
The first one that comes to mind is the Rhone Valley. French growing varieties that we're really good at. I love their wines. I love Margaret River out of Australia as well.
Yep.
That's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Probably the two. Yep.
Cool. If you had a theme song, what would it be?
That's very easy.
We go.
Yeah, so there's a song called The Mighty Quin. Have you heard?
Oh, yeah, no, of course. By
Bob Dylan wrote it.
all right.
Yeah, I can't remember the
The
name.
Mighty,
of the guy.
of course it is.
So The Mighty Quin.
Yeah.
Surely.
That makes sense.
Last time I was on,
Yeah.
Angus actually sung for us. I wonder whether he should sing.
The Mighty Quin. I don't know. That's really putting him on the spot. That's
No good.
That's
I can't do it.
Like, I would absolutely love to if I knew the song. But I think, you know, look, I would happily sing the song for you, Quinny, if you were to show me how.
Well, that could be an episode for another time, perhaps.
Last question on that. Very contentious, very off script. I like it. What is your favourite non-traditional food and wine pairing?
Oh, there's one I've always talked about, but people talk about Pinot and Duck. I love Zinfandel and Duck.
Yeah.
The fruit sweetness of the Zin pairs with that sort of fishiness of the Duck. That's probably the one that always jumps into my mind.
Amazing. That's my quick fire round. You are completed. Thank you. Well, cheers, that.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying both of these, by the way. I hope you guys who are tasting along at home are enjoying, of course, as well. Guys, that's it. We're through. Unless there's any more questions, queries, likes, dislikes, always loves. Holly, I'm just getting 2 thumbs up back here,
Yeah,
which
we're
makes me
pretty
feel good,
clear.
makes you feel
Everyone's
good.
happy.
Guys, this was good fun. From all of us at the farm, we've had a good time, of course. We hope you have an absolute gripping weekend. We do want to let you know, of course, in the next little while, we are going to have Daniel Machos on for our episode with Riesling, a absolute, Barossa person through and through. He's going to give us some great insights on some Riesling. We are, of course, open back again. After all things pandemic, we're back open, doing some tastings at the cellar door. If you haven't been up recently, please come up and say g'day. We'd obviously love to have you. But from all of us here, once again, have a wonderful weekend. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Done.